Hello, Tom Barnett here again with another story behind the illustration. Here one that suffered only the most modest of edits. This illustration was the very first one Jim did. I figured it was the easiest one to try first because the title basically demanded a simple chart. I didn't ask for that, but that's what Jim came up with, so we were in sync from the start. I felt very strongly about getting this thread into the book, sensing that America's ongoing racial makeover was key to understanding our changing relationship with globalization, which some Americans now very vehemently blame for this transformation. You know, the invasion, the great replacement theory, all that kind of stuff. As I argued in the accompanying text, this reality of whites moving into majority-minority status, it's not some undiscovered country, but rather it's a spreading reality that has existed for a while for a number of states. It's always existed in Hawaii, for example, and is spreading to even more states over time. This trend is clearly accelerated generation by generation. And so it can be tracked, as I note in the text, using the example of my son Jerome, born in the year 2000. As he ages, he rides the crest of this generational change, meaning for him, it is the norm and has always been the norm. I'd like to note here also the great work on the subject by William Frey of the Brookings Institution, on whose research my book relied when it came to this subject. So, looking at this change over time, it's pretty clear that there is an almost climate velocity-like progression unfolding here, state tier by state tier as you move northward, with much of the current projections extending, as I note here, to the year 2060. Which is where I went originally with my own proposed graphic in Jim's first version, a 1960 to 2060 time frame. I guess I was just tempted to make the transformation line up with my own life. I was born in 1962. So our first iteration went with that century band, and these were the numbers generated. And here I ask you to note that on the right, we went with 6 colored balls out of 10 to signify the numerical shift. And yet, being someone who likes round numbers, I was drawn to what eventually became the 50-50-50 reference in the thread's title, 1950 to 2050, with a drop for whites to just below 50%. So after some consultation with Jim, we made the adjustment to the 1950 through 2050 time frame. That got us rounded numbers on the left, a nice 90-10 split, and something closer to the tipping point moment on the right, 53% non-white to 47% white. But if you look closely, you'll see that we still have 6 colored balls to 4 white balls. And our 6 colored balls are of various hues. Both of those elements were adjusted in the Red Team review for clarity and to avoid any weird interpretations. So a 5-to-5 split on the balls, indicating the razor-thin margin there in 2050. Again, wanting to focus on that tipping point. And all the non-white balls are now colored the same to skip that question from being raised. So you can see we really did worry about these little bits and how it might be interpreted and either add or detract to the meaning that we were trying to convey. Which gets us to the final book version, the only one in the book that replicates a chart from my briefing. Why? we didn't want to leave it up to the viewer's interpretation here. We wanted the message to be loud and clear on this radically reshaping phenomenon. And that is the story behind this illustration. As always, we love it when people buy the book, when they recommend the book, when they praise the book online. I and my Throughline colleagues, we feel very passionate about this work. Please consider subscribing to my Substack newsletter, and see you next time, next illustration.